Welcome back to Greater Bridgewater. In our election special now for the final 30 minutes of the show, I'm going to introduce all the guests to my right. My co-host tonight is 13-year-old Adam Tomasi. To his immediate left is Matt Albanese, a former West Bridgewater Selectman Chair. And then over to Matt's left is Corey Welch, and Corey is a candidate for the 5th Plymouth District State Representative. Gentlemen, I'll give you each about a minute to introduce yourselves, and we'll get going.
All right, so my name's Adam Tomasi. I'm 13 years old, and I go to Sacred Heart Intermediate School in Kingston, Massachusetts. I'm what you would call a young conservative. You know, I'm on my school's debate team. I'm a student of political philosophy. You know, I do well in school otherwise. You know, I'm very book smart. And, you know, as I've been very involved in politics, I've seen how the election season's been going on. You know, I'm very optimistic about the future of the GOP and just how things would turn out in public discourse in the sake of the election season until Election Day in almost around 5 days. So I'm glad that Miles had me here as a co-host, and thank you.
Very good. Bright future as a politician. Matt, why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name's Matt Albanese. I served 2 terms on the West Bridgewater Board of Selectmen. I'm a native of East Bridgewater, and I recently was a candidate, a Democratic candidate for state representative in the 10th Plymouth District, which includes about a third of the city of Brockton, all of West Bridgewater, and 1 precinct in the town of Easton. So it's great to be here.
Terrific. And Corey?
Yes, my name's Corey Welch. I'm 35 years old. I currently live in Rockland, Massachusetts. My background's mostly in real estate and mortgages. I did work a year for a high-tech company selling IT solutions to Fortune 500 companies. And I just decided to office because I'm just currently very disappointed with the climate right now we have with our politicians on Beacon Hill. I feel we're not being represented, and I think it's time the people of the state elect representatives who will actually be their voice rather than just another vote for House leadership. So,
very good. Gentlemen, why don't we jump right into what is probably one of the most talked about races right now in Massachusetts. That is the governor's race. First off, Matt, I'll give you the first question. How do you feel about Governor Patrick and the job he has done in his first 4 years as governor?
I think he's done an excellent job, to be honest with you, Miles. He's brought a different approach to the State House. Albeit he's a Democrat, but he's a Democrat that's brought some new ideas and some change. And I think he is going to be in a close race, but I think ultimately he'll be able to pull this out.
Terrific. Now, he has really preached about his education reform. How do you feel he's done with regards to education and a lot of the reform there?
Typically, these are very strong issues for Democrats to begin with. But I think his reform efforts have gone a long way here in the Commonwealth. Recently, there was some news release that, you know, Massachusetts students, in terms of MCAS testing, you know, rank far above their peers in other states. But arguably, I think the standard in this Commonwealth is we've got to compete against kids from other countries. It's not just about other states or other cities and towns. So that's something that I think Governor Patrick is looking at going forward and wants to lay the groundwork for over the next 4 years. Very
good. Now, Corey, you mentioned to me, you said I'm very preempted in my own race right now, but how do you feel the campaign that Charlie Baker has run will possibly, how will it result on Election Day?
Well, you know, hopefully I'm pulling for Charlie Baker, personally, just because I am one of the people out there that's currently looking at the races, and I want to do a clean sweep. I believe we need to start anew. I would like to see some fresh faces in there, some new ideas. I was a little disappointed this year in the fact that, given our economic times, a very key piece of legislation that could have been passed regarding the casino bill was left on the table. They waited till the very last minute to work on it. I think it just goes to show that there's too many hens in the hen house. You know what I mean? So you have too many people butting heads rather than working together. Everyone's looking out for their piece of pie. And I think that by leaving that bill on the table and not getting it done with a Democratic governor, with a heavily Democratic Senate and a heavily Democratic House where there's major majorities, I think that it was a huge failure and it didn't look good on his part.
Adam, you want to chime in?
All right, now I think that Charlie's running a great campaign, a positive issues-based campaign. I feel as though he has great plans for reform to move Massachusetts forward. I mean, on his website, he's presented many plans to get jobs back in the state, to fix Beacon Hill so it's no longer broken, or he has many reforms for good government. And he also has many reforms that he'd like to put in place in his first term to save taxpayers about $1 billion. And he would like to roll back sales and income taxes, etc. So I feel that he's running a great issues-based campaign in that aspect. And now in the case of Deval, my standpoint is that he's perpetuating the fact that Beacon Hill is broken. But at the same time, I'd also like some transparency on whether or not his funding is actually helpful. Now, for the both of you guys, do either of you feel that Tim Cahill's candidacy is affecting either Deval or Charlie's campaigns?
And let's also not forget about the fourth candidate, which is Jill Stein.
Absolutely. And in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that, Miles. Having watched the debate just the other night, I thought you did a phenomenal job and brought a difference. Sometimes the three candidates, the three standard bearers, seem to overlap in their approach. But to get back to Adam's question, about the campaign in general and with Governor Patrick and transparency, I think he's shown as a Democrat that he's different from the Democrats that control the state Senate or that control the House of Representatives. So in that respect, he's not your parents' Democrat. He's a bit of a maverick and certainly a newcomer when it comes to Massachusetts politics.
Now, in regards to Tim Cahill and the race, he's certainly put on a race. How do you feel his campaign has differed from the likes of Deval or the likes of Charlie Baker? Matt, I'll give you the floor first.
I think what Tim did was a very courageous thing for someone that has been a lifelong Democrat to break from your party, go a separate route, in this case the independent route. I give him a lot of credit. He's stuck out this race. I know his polling numbers aren't great, but that's not to say that's the be-all, end-all. He's certainly going to have an impact. We've seen in larger elections, presidential elections, you can have 1 or 2% going to a candidate, and that can shape a race, so I'm glad he's staying in.
Corey?
Me, personally, I think that he entered the race as the spoiler almost, but
So like Christy Myhouse, say, in 2006.
Yes, kind of entered it as the spoiler, and I think that it's a free country. He can stay in the race, but I just believe it didn't do any justice with what happened in the end, how his running mate, backed out. And that's what I think voters are fed up with today. They're fed up with this political baloney, these political theatrics. We have serious problems in this state and this country, and people want to know how we're going to fix them. And personally, I feel that Tim Cahill, I wouldn't vote for him because, again, he fits my mold of someone who's been part of our system for way too long.
Okay, now quickly before we move on to the next race, why don't we talk about campaign ads? I will personally go right out on the floor first and say I am completely against negative campaigning. I am sure maybe you guys can agree. Corey, why don't you start off in regards to the negative campaign ads, not only in the governor's race, but more or less affecting the governor's race?
I agree. I mean, I'm tired of the negative ads. From talking to people in the streets, what I'm seeing is negative ads seem to be pushing people away from the person pushing the negative ads. It's hard enough as it is today to figure out exactly where candidates stand in the issues. It's hard to find out people's voting records to see what their history is. It's not like these candidates posted on their website free for everyone to take a look at. I mean, they don't do that in Massachusetts for a reason. And I just think that people are absolutely sick of the negative campaigning. I am personally. Like I said, we have serious problems. We need serious people to solve them. And people want to hear how are you going to do that.
Now, on the sake of about negative ads, I mean, I agree with Corey and Miles here that, I mean, the voters are very sick of negative ads. I don't think that the voters really like the politics of politics. I mean, as these negative ads continue to repeat, minute after minute, like as I'm watching the television and I see more ads against Charlie Baker, Deval Patrick, Tim Cahill, etc. I mean, these races have been really heating up as a result of negative ads. I think that at some point the voters get really sick of that. I mean, I'm not eligible to vote yet, but if I was voting for a candidate, I would vote for them on the grounds that they were the better candidate, not that there was another candidate that was worse.
Matt?
I think the media has a lot to do with the negative ads too, not just the individual campaigns. And I agree with all three of you that it's just going too far. The redundancy in driving home the point night after night, every 10 minutes when a commercial comes on, as Adam mentioned, I mean, that's just too much. And people don't need that. They don't need the negative reinforcement. Once a story's been run, it's been run. Let's move on to something else. And what I'm hearing from people is, we're not even looking for a change anymore. We've tried change, that's not working. They just are disgusted in general, and I think the negative ads play a big role in that.
All right, let's move on to the auditor's race. Two candidates, actually three. There is an independent in the race. It's a race that not many people have followed. So, Matt, I'll give you the floor to speak in regards to Susan Bump for about a minute, and then Corey, you'll have the floor for a minute to speak about Mary Connaughton. Go ahead.
In the interest of disclosure, I just want to say I was supporting Guy Glotus, who was running as a Democrat in the primary, and I think the Democrats are still trying to figure out how that race shaped up. Guy Glotus was well-financed. He certainly out-hustled, outspent, outworked his opponent, yet I think was blown away by a 2-to-1 margin.
Exactly. Now, how did that work out quickly?
I don't know, and I think that's the mystery. And I don't think the Democrats are really looking at that. They obviously were rallying behind Suzanne Bump, who's a former state representative from Braintree, and we certainly hope she's able to pull this race out. But I think what you're seeing is somebody with some experience on Beacon Hill who understands the dynamic, but yet at the same time is looking to be, quote, an independent voice for reform. And whether or not that message carries or resonates with voters is going to be up to the other candidate out of the three, or the second runner there, Mary Z.
Yep.
Connaughton.
Corey?
I'll have to say I agree with him. Who was Susan Bump, by the way? Everywhere I looked, I saw Guy Glotus. I saw Guy Glotus signs. The ugly black and yellow sign. Someone should have helped him out with sign design.
We were talking about yellow and black signs before we went on.
No good. No good.
No.
But I would have to say that I would pull for, I like Mary Z in this race. I mean, in Massachusetts, what a novel idea. Have a CPA run for auditor. Someone who actually might know how to audit is an auditor. I mean, our Attorney General has to be an attorney. So why would it not make sense that a CPA be an auditor?
And I mean, I agree with Corey on those grounds that, I mean, it's common sense that we need an auditor to be an auditor. Otherwise, the person fulfilling the position would not be qualified in that respect.
Now, this is a question for all three. Do you guys feel, though, that this is a nonpartisan race?
Well, I think that, as of now, it seems to be nonpartisan, that the race hasn't been as followed as, say, the governor's race or any of the congressional seats. But, I mean, I think that it's up to the voters to decide who's the best auditor. I'm personally pulling for Mary Z. And, I mean, yeah, I feel that, she's the best qualified candidate. I mean, she's an auditor for auditor. I mean, I'm not too worried about Suzanne Bump, but I think that Mary Z is the better qualified candidate.
I think you could even argue not only should the auditor's position be nonpartisan, but even the Attorney General.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Much like judges, for that matter. If you inject partisan politics, into the bench, you can imagine how awful that would be. And I think in some instances, you get too much of the politics with those two statewide offices. So it would be good to have an independent person appointed, even if it's by the governor.
And for the people not following this race, this is a neck-and-neck race right now. Many polls have said that Mary Z's ahead. Many have said Suzanne Bump's ahead. So this is going to be one that people will probably wonder and wait after the polls close.
What I think people should realize is that, one of the big issues with the state is obviously balance. There's no balance. There's no watchdogs looking out for the people, who, we have representatives up there representing, and we're just a heavy imbalance. So even if the Republicans do well this year, they're not going to make up enough grounds to make a realistic dent in the minority that they have. So what I believe is that if you're going to pick some races to choose a Republican, this is one of them, because at least you'll have a Republican monitoring the legislature and auditing agencies that are primarily all heavily Democratic. I mean, this is a chance to get someone in there who might go in and rattle some pots and pans and shake out some loose change.
And similar to the 5th Plymouth District.
Yeah, exactly.
And to further Corey's point, I mean, I think that we really need a conservative Republican fiscal watchdog in the State House, especially if we're still going to have a weak minority.
Now, here's where I'm going to disagree with you, though, on this, and I'm going to actually side with Matt. I think we really do need more of a balance. I feel like, especially in Massachusetts, the state has gotten away from that balance. But there should be a fair balance across the board. It shouldn't be all Democrats, all Republicans. And I think for the most part we can agree on that. There should be a balance rather than a one-party rule.